Hi, thanks for joining us today. This is Dr. Lambert Collins with Katy Lifestyle Chiropractic here in Katy, Texas. I'm a chiropractor and a nutritionist, and today I'm talking with Dr. Arland Hill. He's also a chiropractor and a nutritionist, but he's got a special little talent that he's doing now. And one of the reasons that I wanted to talk with him is he is the owner of Harvest Hills Ranch, and he provides organic food for the community. And it's so important these days to have an outlet like that for people. And that's why I wanted to interview him today, just to talk to him a little bit about it. So, Dr. Hill, if you would, give me a little bit of information about your background, your educational background.
Yeah, and first of all, thank you, Dr. Collins, for having me on today. It's a pleasure to be on here and to get to chat with a like-minded individual and who certainly appreciates what we're trying to do out here at the ranch. A little bit about my background. My education in regards to what we're doing today probably actually started when I was a kid, growing up in an agricultural family. Granted, we did things a little different back then than what we do now, but certainly some of the foundation for what we do currently at Harvest Hills Ranch was laid at that point. But with that in mind, my background in chiropractic and then really evolving more into the nutritional realm, what I began to see is that there was such a need for nutrition, one, and understanding the importance and the role that that plays for just supporting normal health, but also helping individuals who are actually struggling with their health. But one of the things that I came to realize while being in practice is that the outlets and the resources for quality food, and actually even an understanding of what quality food is, we saw that there was a lot of misinformation around that. We saw that the hand of marketing had confused that quite a bit, and we wanted to try to be a resource for truth. And one, we realized that if you're going to be that resource, you can't just talk about it. You've actually got to get your hands dirty, so to say, and you've
You
actually got to
just
be able
talk
to.
the talk, you got to walk the walk,
You
huh?
got to walk the walk. You're right. You got to be able to actually illustrate and show when someone says, hey, food can be grown without chemicals and without all these other inputs that is commonplace in our food supply. We actually wanted to fully illustrate that, yes, that can be done. And that's what we do here. And we also secondarily, and maybe to some degree more importantly, we wanted to be that resource for people. So when someone says, well, where do I go find this, we wanted to take the complexity out of that and actually be that resource for those individuals that were looking for quality food sources.
Yeah, that's awesome. You and I have so much in common. I grew up in a farm slash ranch family, and we grew a lot of the food that we ate. And I'm a little bit older than you, but I can remember when the government actually came out and said, "Hey, we'll pay you to stop letting the cows fertilize your field and put this nitrogen fertilizer down." And the first time we did it, the crops were amazing, the yield was amazing, but the taste was just not the same.
Right.
And since we ate a lot of the food that we grew, my father actually stopped doing it after one year. He just wouldn't take the money because it just didn't taste the same, and the nutritional quality was not the same. And so I grew up in basically organic farming, just like what people are paying a lot of money now to figure out how to do. So I applaud. It's not easy to do organic farming, and it's a lot harder. So I understand that, and I applaud you for doing that.
But I will tell you also, and I fully agree with what you're saying, but it is so much more rewarding. And the thing we always try to come back to when I'm looking at how we're running systems or when I'm looking to implement something new is I look and ask myself, well, how does nature do this? What is it what are the principles in nature that are going to govern what I'm trying to implement on the farm? And we always try to work within the context of nature and working with it versus against it. And just as an example on that, a lot of times people will think, well, if there's a bug on my food, well, oh my goodness, that must be a problem. Well, it is a problem if you have a poor poor quality food that doesn't have good nutrient richness about it. But if you really put a lot of effort into improving the nutritional quality of food, making sure that the minerals are in the food, making sure that there's a good activity in the soil, good microbial activity in the soil to nourish the plant, the bugs don't want the plants. The bugs don't have complicated digestive systems like we do. And if we grow a fully competent, healthy plant, the bugs can't even digest those plants and they don't want them. They just keep moving on. And so you end up with a more nutritious food, but you also end up with a food that is protected by its inherent qualities from being attacked by pesticide or by pests, and therefore you don't need the pesticides.
Amazing, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah. And I also understand that you raise cattle as well, and you have chickens and ducks and all that. Tell us a little bit about what you do on the farm, all of the types of animals that you do on raise on the farm.
We do have a pretty good diversity of animals here. We do have, I would consider as our base, our cattle and our chickens. And what we try to do with those guys is we do integrate them together. It's not really we do integrate them together. And we run the chickens either in front of or behind the cows. And the idea with this is that when they're running in front of the cows, they're actually providing fertilizer, they're laying down their manure, and we're getting better grass, better forage for the cows. And so when we think about this context of eating grass-fed, grass-finished beef, well, you can only do that if you have good quality forage for those animals to function on. And so our cows come behind the chickens, they reap the benefits of that better forage. And then as the cows have gone through, we also have chickens follow in behind them too. And any of the pests, parasites, things like that, as the chickens are scattering out the manure pats, they're actually breaking up those pest cycles, those parasite cycles. So when we start thinking about eating clean food sources, now we're not forced to have to use wormers and some of these toxic chemicals that are just considered the norm now in the cattle industry. We don't use those with our cows because of the way we're constantly moving them and the way we're integrating the animals together to break those parasite cycles. It's not necessary to have those two things to use those chemical inputs. So we have the chickens, we have the cows, we have ducks, and we have guineas. And the duck eggs are a consistent part of our what we bring to market and what we supply our customers with. And then also when they're available, we do have guinea eggs as well. It's not something that we try to specialize in, but they are, we have an abundance of them. So we do make those available to the public as well for purchase. And then in addition to that, we have our market garden. And what we try to do with our market garden and orchard is when things are in season, when there's abundance of those things, we try to make those available to our customers as well so they can have high quality, nutrient rich food choices.
Fantastic. So let's back up just a minute. Now, do you consider yourself a rancher or a farmer or both? I know when I was growing up, if you had livestock, you were a rancher. If you planted crops, you were a farmer. So there's a new breed out there. And so what do you consider yourself?
Yeah, it's I got to tell you, I'm chuckling on this because this was a conversation when we first bought the place and we were trying to decide were we going to call it a farm or were we going to call it a ranch. And I was going to call it a farm because I grew up in a farming family, but in Texas, you tend to have more ranches. And my wife, being from Texas, thought we should name it a ranch. And ultimately the name came out as Harvest Hills Ranch. So you know who won that conversation. So we have a ranch. I would say, even though we do integrate a lot of farming into the ranch, but we have a ranch, I guess.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, you didn't really go into a lot of your background education, and I know you've got a lot of different degrees, and you're not just a one-trick pony. So I wanted to find out, let you go ahead and tell us how you came to be a chiropractor and all of the education that you have that led you to be able to do this ranch.
Yeah, so my education, beyond my high school education, kind of the path was I graduated from the University of North Carolina with a degree in biochemistry, and that there was inherently an interest for me right from the outset of how things within the body worked. I wanted that appreciation. I wanted to understand it at a deeper level. From there, I had some personal experience with chiropractic. I knew I wanted to go into the healthcare field and really try to put a clinical application to that biochemistry degree. And because of my positive experience with chiropractic, because there was an opportunity for me to have the ability to work with a diversity of different types of patients, not just a musculoskeletal patient, but patients with any number of ailments, and to be able to understand nutrition at a deeper level, chiropractic was the right fit for me personally. As I was concluding my chiropractic education and actually after graduating the first few years, I completed a diplomate in nutrition. So I currently hold status as a diplomate with the American Clinical Board of Nutrition. And then I felt like that I had an understanding of the science, I had an understanding of the clinical application, but I really wanted a different understanding of public health as a whole. And so I followed up my diplomate with a master's in public health from the University of Massachusetts. And I felt like by doing that, it gave me a different perspective, because now I could see at a societal level what some of the influential things were that were causing people to make the decisions they were around their diet, around their health. So it gave me a more well-rounded view, if you will. And then from that, I spent several years and still do see patients, but I spent those years really digging in the clinical side and trying to understand what makes people make the decisions they do. And I realized from that, that's where we were going to have to do something with the farm. That was a passion that I had. I wanted to explore that at a deeper level, and I wanted it to be something bigger than, hey, we just have a farm out here. I really wanted it to mean something for the community as a whole. And so what I've really spent the last 2.5, 3 years doing is immersing myself in a lot of education around some of the principles that we talk about here on the farm, not just organic principles, but regenerative principles. People have heard the concept of sustainable agriculture. Well, sustainable agriculture is a good thing, but it does also mean that you're just staying at the status quo. You're not going backwards, but you're not going forward either. And I really wasn't comfortable with just that. Even though that is good, we can do better than that. And that's where we work in a concept of what's known as regenerative agriculture. So I want to see the things that we're doing here on the farm improve year over year over year. I want the landscape to look better. I want the grasses to be better. I want the diversity on our farm to be better year over year. And that wasn't something that I just had the idea of. That was something that it came about as a result of doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of studying, understanding how the choices that I make here on the farm, when we talk about nutrient-rich food, when we talk about whole foods, those things don't just happen. Those things are there has to be intention behind growing and raising those things. And that's what we've spent the last several years being able to do and understand how to really develop nutrient-rich food that people will appreciate and benefit from.
Fantastic. And I wanted you to really get that out, because I know throughout the years that you and I have known each other and we've seen patients and collaborating together. One of the hardest things to get across to people is how important eating just real whole food is to their health. And with the coronavirus thing going on right now and everybody staying at home, if you go to the shelves, you venture out to the grocery store, all of the good food is still on the shelves, and all of the packaged food, what they call comfort food, is gone. And it really amazes me, but it brings to the point that in this country, we really don't, we have a disconnect with where our food comes from, how to eat, what is actually good for us. The most convenient thing is not always the best for us, right? And so I know I've preached for years with my patients that they need to eat whole foods, and there's not a magic pill out there. Even though you and I both, sometimes we give supplements to begin the process of healing people, but the bottom line is food. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about and get your idea on why right now, with the COVID-19 that's out there and people getting sick, why it's so important to have real whole food, grass-fed beef, and all of that.
I think you hit on such an important concept there when you mentioned disconnect. Most people are disconnected from food. There was a time, and you and I both experienced this when we were younger, where we grew up in more of an agrarian environment. And now you look at it, most people have no exposure to that. The majority of society is disconnected from their food supply. They don't see how food is produced. They don't see what goes into food. And when you do see what goes into food, you have a deeper appreciation for that food. And that's unfortunate. That's something that everyone could benefit. And honestly, one of the reasons that we shoot a lot of YouTube videos to try to put that information out there and let people see that firsthand. But I think one of the things that you said, just as it relates to COVID, that I'd like to draw out is that we know with the COVID-19, that many of the individuals who are succumbing to this virus, there's a lot of comorbidities associated with this virus and the people that succumb to it. We know that cardiovascular disease is one of those comorbidities, diabetes, and there's certainly a long list of other ones that have been identified. But if you look at, and this is not new information, this is well established at this point, whether it's diabetes, cardiovascular disease, an autoimmune condition, or any other chronic disease that we often talk about, we all know inherently, even if we don't know the science behind it, inherently, we know that the food choices that we make directly influence whether or not we're going to develop one of those conditions or have a greater predisposition for developing one of those conditions. So if we can make food choices that are going to offset even the comorbidities, we know just based on the numbers that our likelihood, even if we contract the COVID virus, that our likelihood of succumbing to that virus is greatly decreased just based on the food choices that we've made. Now, that's on a bigger, longer scale type of picture. If we look at things on the short-term scale, more of a short-term nature, one of the things that we know is that when we're eating nutrient-rich foods, those nutrient-rich foods are going to bolster our immune system. Well, when we talk about the immune system, it's not this, mystical thing. We know what causes the immune system to operate. We know that there are certain nutrients in place. We know that if we have adequate amounts of, say, for example, the carotenoids and vitamin A, we know that that's going to stimulate the activity of the lymphocytes. We know that if we have adequate zinc and selenium, because we're making choices for proteins that are rich in those minerals, the more availability of those minerals are, the more that's going to benefit the immune system, the more that's going to decrease the inflammatory responses in the body and allow a more competent immune system. So it directly ties into what we're talking about, and what we're seeing in our society with this virus directly ties into the food choices that we make, not just now, but over the long term as well. Because, just by the nature of viruses in general and immune function, whether it's COVID-19 or some other virus, viruses will come back around. Viruses are a consistent part of our environment, and how our immune system interacts with that viruses and whether or not it succumbs to it is directly correlated to the choices that we're making. So why not make the better choice and put the odds on your side?
Oh, I definitely agree. One of the things that you said is we know that the food doesn't. You and I know, and the healthcare professionals know, a lot of the people out there don't know. And that's why they're making the choices that they make. Just a few things. One of the things is, I tell people zinc is one of the most important things for keeping a virus from replicating, right? Now, where do you get zinc? Well, you can get that in liver. And people say, oh, no, I'd never eat liver. We used to eat liver, and our ancestors ate liver. And where we got away from that and just started eating chicken breast, I don't know. But that's just one example. Eggs are a good source. All of the things that we used to eat traditionally kept us healthy because, as you say, viruses have been around forever. This isn't the first virus to come through. It's a new virus. However, your immune system is designed to take care of anything that's out there. And there's a reason why some people succumb to it and some people don't. And some people get it and they get better on their own because there really is no treatment for it right now. I know they're talking about a drug and plus zinc. And if you can do a lot of that by eating the right foods to prevent it prevent you from having to take the drugs. The drugs are a last resort. But I think the education of the population out there, what's good to eat and what not to eat, is probably even more important. Like I said, you look on the grocery shelves, and all the good food is still there. All the bad food is gone.
You know, you're so accurate on what you're saying there. And one of the things that I think gets in the way of individuals making good decisions is marketing. And this is not an anti-marketing type of statement, but what I am suggesting is that
They've done a great job of pushing their agenda. Great job of pushing their agenda.
It's exactly true. I mean, that's exactly what they've done. And in so doing, they've confused the masses at large about what truly a good food is. You know, if you're looking at foods that don't have a lot of color and a lot of natural variety in them, if the diet is fairly monotonous and you're eating the same things over and over, those are some early indicators, just some easy indicators that we can all ask ourselves: how diverse am I being with my diet? Am I eating a diversity of foods? Is there a lot of color on my plate that I'm consuming each day? And if those two things aren't working in your favor, if there's not a lot of diversity, if there's not a lot of color, you're probably headed down the wrong path. You're probably making choices that are not in your best interest.
You know, I have my patients do food diaries, and they'll come in and they'll say, oh, I didn't do my food diary this week, but it's exactly the same as last week. I eat the same thing every day. And, you know, my response to that is, our bodies are not designed to eat the same thing every day. You know, if you look back 200 years ago, before we had the modern packaged foods and the refrigeration and everything, you ate what was in season, pretty much. When it was gone, you ate something else. And so the body is designed to roll through the seasons, to stock up weight for the winter, you know, fat for the winter, and lean down for the summer, for the hot months. And usually what we're doing today is we're eating like we're going into winter the entire time. And people wonder why they can't lose weight.
Yeah, you know, you said something there that I want to expound on in terms of how we operate here at the ranch in regards to the seasonality of foods. Once in a while, we'll get questions of, well, why isn't this in stock, or why don't you guys have this? And the answer to that many times is the seasonalities. I don't push things out of season. I'm not going to try to, you know, run chickens on pasture in the middle of the winter when it's extremely cold and I have no green grass to work with. That's just not a natural situation for raising those animals. Same thing, I'm only going to try to grow what type of produce is in season at a given time of the year. And we do that, again, as you alluded to, because that's the natural rhythm of the body. The body is not intended to eat the same things repetitively all the time. Otherwise, we run the risk of creating challenges for our immune system because of a whole different aspect, creating allergies and sensitivities. So you want that diversity for a number of reasons, not to mention that when you look at developing these plants in a way where they are grown with a lot of nutrient richness, one of the other lesser talked about attributes to those plants is that they have a group of compounds that get lumped into what are called secondary metabolites. And these are medicinal-like compounds. These are the things that reduce the inflammation, have antioxidants, are going to be stimulatory to the immune system. They have a lot of healing and therapeutic value. And those components to the plant are only maximized if that plant has the ability to reach its full potential and its full nutrient richness.
You mean not harvesting it 2 weeks early so that it won't spoil on the on the truck getting to 1,000 miles away? Is that what you're talking about?
you are certainly highlighting one of the problems there, sir.
Hey, I know we've been talking a little while here. Don't want to draw it out too long, but I want to see if you, you know, for all those people out there who are watching this and they say, you know, hey, that sounds really great. I'd like to eat whole food. How do I get started doing that? Because right now I'm a TV dinner person. So any advice on how to get started eating whole foods?
Yeah, one thing I always like to point to on this is most people don't eat whole foods because they think they're bland or they don't taste good. and understand that that blandness that you are experiencing, or that bitterness that you may experience sometimes, understand that that is a byproduct of that food not having nutrient richness. Aroma and flavor are some of the last characteristics to develop in produce. And so if you bite into a carrot and that carrot tastes soapy, that carrot is not fully nutrient rich. It does not have the same nutritional qualities as a carrot that you bite into that has a sweetness to it. So I would recommend really being adamant about where you select your food from. Make the effort to buy organic, because those organic principles, not 100%, but in general, those foods are going to have better nutritional quality. And visit farmers markets when they come back around, or develop relationships with farmers. A lot of farmers are delivering into areas now because of the changes that we're seeing within our society. And those farmers, most of the time, that are delivering like that, they have really put the effort into developing a nutrient-rich food that's going to have flavor. And so when you start to try those, you'll probably be amazed at some of these foods that you may thought, that really wasn't that good of a food last time I tried it. And all of a sudden it tastes pretty good. So it has a way of snowballing, and it has a way of creating adventure within your palate, that if one food that maybe you thought didn't taste good all of a sudden starts to have some flavor because you were particular about where you sourced it and where you bought it at, now maybe you'll start to try other things as well. And as time goes on, you'll find that your palate has expanded out.
Awesome. One of the things that for people who can't afford the all organic right now, one of the things that I did when I first started eating a little differently was reducing sugar. And the more I reduced sugar, the better everything else tasted. As an example, I didn't like Brussels sprouts, man, from when I was a little kid, but they're actually sweet now, which is ridiculous. And I started eating liver, I guess about 6 months ago, once a week. Which was a food that I've been telling my patients to eat, but I would never eat because my parents used to make me eat it when I was a little kid, and I swore I'd never eat it again, right? Just like everybody else. And after about 3 or 4 weeks of just eating liver, it actually started to taste sweet. And now I love it. It's ridiculous how your taste buds can change when you get rid of all the negative and the bad clutter that you're putting into your body.
It's so
well,
true.
let's wrap this up. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's so true. And it also, as you consume these other foods, a lot of these other taste profiles that we have, whether it's bitter or tart, these things start to have, these start to come out in foods as well. And individuals over time start to develop an appreciation for having some of these bitters around. We know that there's some value in having food that has a bitter flavor to it once in a while. Not that that's something we necessarily are seeking out all the time, but when we consume those things, they're not as offensive as they might be, say, for someone just getting started or who has not had a whole foods type of diet. But as you eat more of a whole foods type of diet, you find out that those bitters really aren't as offensive as they were at one point for you.
Yeah, they're good in just other things other than margaritas.
That's right.
So how does someone get in touch with you and utilize your services? Here's your chance to do your marketing.
Yeah, so we're pretty easy to find. If someone goes to harvesthillsranch.com, you'll see right there on our website, there's a shop tab. And if you click on that, that's going to take you into our storefront, and you'll see all the different things that we produce. And again, that's a live inventory. So it's maintained throughout the year, and it's going to fluctuate throughout the year, but there's going to be some consistent products on there with the chicken, with the beef, as well as a few other things. And then we deliver into the Houston and Southeast Texas or Beaumont markets. You'll see that when you make a purchase through our store, we have delivery dates of when we bring those foods into certain locations. And what you would do is just select the location that's closest to you, and we'll bring whatever you've ordered right to you at that drop site and just hand it right off to you. But again, you'll start out at harvesthillsranch.com and just click on the shop button, and it'll take you right where you need to go.
And then you're also on Instagram and YouTube, correct?
We are on Instagram and YouTube. You'll find us there at Dr. Arland Hill. And definitely look at those. We are constantly adding content to both of those outsources. And we like to do that because we want folks to see firsthand. I always said that when we started this venture, we were going to maintain transparency. I wasn't going to hide behind my fences, and we weren't going to, not show people what we do. I want people to see firsthand how good food is raised. And so take a look at those at YouTube and social media outlets, because I think not only will you get an education, I'm sure you'll get a good laugh once in a while at some of the things that happen around here.
I know I follow you on Instagram, and it brings back old memories when you're out there in the rain moving the chickens from one piece of land to another piece of land, or because I used to have to do that as a kid too. So it really brings back some really good memories. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today and talk with you today. Hopefully, if someone watches this video, they'll get a little insight on how to eat better and why it's so important, and why when they come to you or I or another practitioner that's telling them to eat better, it makes sense.
Right.
All right. Take care and have a great day.
Thanks, Doc. Appreciate the time and all the good work you're doing out there on your end as well. We'll talk to you soon.